Let's talk more about this with Shervin Malekzadeh. He's a visiting scholar at Colgate University's Middle Eastern and Islamic Studies program. He joins me now from Los Angeles, and thanks for doing so. Let's start with this. When it comes to how the regime has handled these protests, you tweeted, quote, "I hope I'm wrong. God, do I hope I'm wrong, but it's likely to get worse, much worse." How so? Why?
First of all, thank you, Michael, for having me on. I really appreciate having this opportunity to speak about these incredible events. I think what we're seeing right now is the awful inverse of what we've seen in Iran between 2009 and 2021. We've had a decade of basically a kind of political cat and mouse between state and society, which has taken place mainly at the ballot box, through the vote, through elections. In the context of Iran, I think it's good to think of protests and voting as a kind of continuum in the political sphere. And so long as the public, particularly after the Green Movement, felt that they had an opportunity to create some sort of peaceful and incremental change through voting for some sort of opposition figure in presidential and parliamentary elections, they went for it, right? It's much easier, it's less costly, and it's certainly much less violent. And that's been the case, again, for about a decade now, I think. So now you have these protests, right? You already have the logic of the Islamic Republic rooted in a kind of opposition to injustice. So it's not surprising that the public, and this goes back to my comment about the continuum, would take advantage of those protests, right? But I think for me, there are two major questions here, two or three major questions. To what end, right? If this system or nizam is to end, what will replace it?
Yeah.
I think more importantly, Michael, for me, the question is how. Particularly when you have at least 30% of the population who are vested in preserving the Islamic Republic in its current form.
For people watching who are unfamiliar with life in Iran, just how courageous are these protesters, these women? They're taking off their headscarves, they're burning them, they're cutting their hair. How brave is that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to me, even voting is brave in Iran. But to go out in the street and engage in these sort of civil disobedience or direct action in the manner that we're seeing now, it's one thing if one lady does it here, another lady does it there, but we're seeing en masse men and women side by side. But in particular, as always, the women are at the forefront of this. It can't be overstated how incredibly brave they are, because many are going forth not necessarily with numbers behind them. Right. So, this sort of speaks to just a kind of lack of patience, a complete at the end of their rope kind of situation in Iran.
What might, quote unquote, success look like for these protesters?
Yeah, I think at this point, the sort of without any kind of avenue, as I said, for a kind of resolution, a peaceful resolution, the best thing we can hope for right now is either that the state, under the direction of Khamenei and those around him, to stand down and find a kind of more conciliatory path, which at this moment probably is not going to happen, at least not immediately. Barring that, this is where we rely on the poli-sci research or the sociology research, elite defection, particularly in security forces. Men, and they tend to be men, though there are some women there on the state front lines, who are unwilling to shoot at the public or to repress in a fashion that's demanded of them. This is more likely to happen with nonviolent protests, when you have grandmothers in the streets, which we're also seeing presently, right? Unexpected protesters, not just young people. But if what we're seeing continues, where there's this amazing attack against state forces by the public, my concern, again, is that the state will respond in kind and in a way that will be just unprecedented in Iran. So hopefully these elite defections, the shaming of cops on the ground and their superiors, would bring about a resolution, at least to this phase of the protests.
Well, hopefully it has an effect. Shervin Malekzadeh, we've got to leave it there. Thanks so much. Really appreciate your time.
I appreciate it, Michael. Thank you so much. Cheers.